Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tunnel Vision. Sorry about the delayed start. We had a little technical difficulty, but we fixed it. I'm your host, Keely, Eure, joined alongside Ryan Abraham and special guest Dan Weber joining us in the studio. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us. It's a bright Tunnel Vision. We apologize for that. Daylight savings time kind of threw us for a loop, but you'll see us more as the sun goes down. But this is a special edition of Tunnel Vision. As I mentioned, we have Dan in the studio. We have a lot to talk about. If you haven't heard already, the Operation Varsity Blues, that scandal that broke on Monday, I believe. Tuesday was
Yesterday,
it?
yeah.
It's been a long time.
It was a long 24 hours.
It was a long 24 hours indeed. So we'll talk about that. USC is on spring break right now, but we still have a lot of USC football to discuss. So we'll discuss all of that. And of course, you can write us in on YouTube and Periscope. Facebook is down worldwide, so we can't really have Facebook up right now. So sorry for all you Facebook users if you're on a different platform. We did try.
It's scheduled, so you might be able to watch it a little bit on Facebook, but I don't think we can take your questions if you do get to see it. So.
Yeah, it's a little buggy right now. But also, we're taking live calls. You can see the number down on the screen below, 512-4-TUNNEL. Chris Trevino is screening calls, so you can chat with him, chat with us. If you have any questions for Dan, this is your chance to call in live and talk to him and ask him your questions, so be sure to do that. We're also taking questions on Twitter now, so if you don't like YouTube, don't like Periscope, you're a Twitter person, you can also tweet at us. We can get your tweet on the screen. Just make sure you hashtag it TunnelVision. Alrighty, that's the lengthy intro,
right.
But we made it through. Guys, it's been, like I said, it's an interesting 24 hours in the world of USC. It seems like it keeps getting weirder as time progresses. I mean, what are your thoughts overall about everything that's developed?
I don't know. Can it get weirder? Like it's just at this point where you just sort of expect this to happen, and you wake up. And yesterday I'd gone to the gym. I was gonna do some work and do some writing and some different things, like some fun stuff during spring break, and that all gets thrown out the window when this stuff breaks, and you're just like, this can't even be serious. And John Wilner had a great tweet, and we'll talk about this, Dan, that, there's a lot of schools involved in this. They're high-ranking schools like Yale and Georgetown and UCLA and Stanford. But USC's got the distinction of being the only school that was involved in two FBI scandals from the last 18 months. One with the basketball side and one with this fake athletic prowess side. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. USC is still involved in this day after day. So I don't know. It's you can tweet stuff. And you're like, what are you going to say? This just keeps happening to USC.
Well, there's no other fan base prepared as much, or alumni group or student group as USC. I mean, it's like, I don't know how many years I've been saying this, since 2010 in one way, and even earlier than that. But if it's USC, stay tuned. I mean, the news never goes away. USC never, figures out how to get out of the news. Not only is USC the only school that has both, there are only 4 schools involved in the basketball coach, so they've got one there, indicted and arrested and pled guilty, and then they've got coaches and an administrator in the fake admission scam. USC is the only school with an administrator indicted and arrested. With 3 more coaches, USC then has a total of 5 people involved in the 2 scandals. Nobody else is even close. Again, nobody, no other administrator. USC's got the most coaches. I mean, USC was in the center of this. I think if you look at most of the people involved, I mean, the ringleader was from Newport Beach. Where else? I mean, come on. All the agents live in Newport Beach. Everybody,
William Singer or Rick, or what do they call him? Rick Singer, I think.
Rick Singer, right? Yeah. So Newport Beach, and you just say, so what else is new? And Newport Beach is kind of the home base for USC people in Orange County. I mean, Orange County is like ground zero for USC people to begin with, and Newport. So maybe it was not a surprise that USC would be kind of in central to this, and with so many of the people were either Southern California or Northern California. Again, you would see USC is sort of a natural target for this, and unfortunately, the thing that really I think makes it the most difficult to understand is that people at USC, coaches who won national championships, who brought great honor to themselves in USC, or a senior athletic administrator, were susceptible to whatever all of the things that were going on in terms of the bribes. And, you know, we're talking between a coach and an administrator, like $1,650,000 between the two of them. And it's like, wow.
That's a lot of And people ask all the time, like, well, why is USC getting the bulk of and like Dan explained a lot of it right there. I mean, you first of all, you have the celebrity aspect of it. I mean, we were putting on TV this morning, the local news, they were covering it, not the sports, like everything. Wendy Williams came on afterwards, like some talk show host in New York. She was talking about this the whole time. Like, this is national news, and USC is in the center of it, mostly for the celebrity side, mostly for, like Dan said, having more people involved. The only school that had a senior athletic administrator. So Donna Highland, was it Heinel? Yeah, she's the third ranking member in the USC athletic department. There's Lynn Swan, Steve Lopes, and her. Like, she basically runs all the women's programs. So having her involved, that's something unique. And then when you got the Lori Laughlins of the world, like the celebrity aspect tied to USC, where she has two kids that end up going to USC. And then, you know, while we're getting ready for the show, TMZ's all over this. TMZ puts out a thing. Oh, Lori Laughlin's daughter. Where is she right now? As Lori was flying down to get indicted and arrested, and I guess she posted $1 million bail. Her daughter was in the Bahamas on none other than Rick Caruso, the chairman of the board, UFC's board of trustees, on his yacht, hanging out with his daughter, who they both go to USC together. So that's where she was. You know, they were on spring break and stuff down there. And people are like, well, the headline's a little salacious. Like, she was hanging out there. They're friends at school. Like, the optics of that are just awful. Like, the fact that she's hanging out on the yacht of the chairman of the board of trustees. It's just this, you know, this circle of, entitlement and, ivory tower stuff where we are the 1%ers and all of you don't matter. I don't care what you guys say. It's just, the optics look terrible. So that's why USC is getting a lot more bad press than like UCLA or Stanford.
I hadn't seen that, but speaking of the optics, for Thanksgiving dinner, we decided to do one of those cruises in Newport Harbor, okay? So we're doing the cruise, and you're looking up over the horizon, and you say, is that a destroyer or is that a battleship? What is that ship coming up? What's it doing in Newport Harbor? It's 7 stories high, and it gets there, and I say, uh-oh, it's the Invictus. And there's like 4 people on it, and it's Rick Caruso. So now I'm thinking, if his yacht, it's the largest yacht on the West Coast, okay? But if he's in the Bahamas, did they take it through the Panama Canal? I mean, it's like an ocean going. I mean,
maybe he could get Could you get an Uber yacht when in the Bahamas? Like, you Uber a yacht down there or something?
How much would it cost you just in gas to get that thing from Newport Harbor to the Bahamas?
It's huge. I was shocked. Yeah, I was really shocked when I saw it.
It's one of those things where if someone gave you a yacht, you would be bankrupt instantaneously. Like, it costs like $100,000 a week just to maintain the thing. Like, it's ridiculous.
I think to rent it, it's like $55,000 a day.
Yeah,
something like that. It's just, but when it went by, you thought, what in the world? How could you? You know, and then okay. So, and we looked it up, and it said that is the chairman of the board of USC's yacht. Okay, so
there's some problems, people, at USC right now.
Yeah. So you guys mentioned how it's third in line in the athletic department. One of the people who were indicted. USC, on the other hand, came out with a statement saying USC is not the victim. What do you make of that?
Victim.
Yeah, USC is the victim.
And underlined it.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think they're taking advantage of the theory of the original case in basketball was people were saying, what the heck's the FBI doing and the Department of Justice going after these coaches? Well, the theory was these coaches were defrauding the schools because they were making players ineligible by giving this stuff. And so they said the original theory of the case, was that the schools were victims. Okay, so now both times when USC said it, they said described as victims. They didn't quite come out and say they were describing themselves as victims. They were saying that the federal government was calling all of the schools victims. And that may be the case for some of the schools. I think USC may fall in a different category. When you have a senior athletic administrator who's in the middle of it, you're much less of a victim, I think, at that point. I mean, you are, but you've also got someone you really trust. I mean, apparently, she was the only person at USC who was permitted to go to the admissions committee with all of the people who they would like to have some consideration because there were athletic interests in terms of those people. That everything had to go through her for all the teams, apparently including even football. So she had control of whose names went to the admissions committee and what was on those, on those resumes, bios, whatever they would turn in. So USC, I think, is in a different place from the other schools.
Yeah, the fact that she got $1.3 million in bribes, that's written out the checks to like USC for different departments and accounts that she controlled. It's like insane.
And she said, well, why don't you just do $20,000 a month? Send me a check for $20,000 a month. And okay.
So we actually have a live caller right now.
Oh, nice.
About this specific instance. Mike from Silver Lake is on the line. Mike, hello.
Hi. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you. Dan, first of all, I want to say I really enjoy your articles. I think they're very good and very insightful. So
Thank you,
I
Mike,
appreciate
very
that.
much. Thank you.
Okay. So the question I had now, they mentioned that 3 of the supposedly students were going to be brought in as football recruits. And the question I have is, doesn't the football coach or the coach of that particular area have control over those slots, even though they're not scholarships, but those slots that students are brought in under? Doesn't he or somebody in the football department say, yes, we need these people to be part for our scrub teams and things like that, or is it just this woman who can throw anybody into the hopper?
That seems to be the loophole that they found, or the flaw, because I'm not sure that any of the coaches, or especially the football coaches, knew who was being submitted as potential walk-ons. I think she had. I don't know that anyone else saw that list. For example, the coaches couldn't have seen that list because what was the one guy, 5 foot, 145 pounds, and they put him in there as a long snapper, and they were just making stuff up. I think one of the reasons they had to, it seems crazy that they would even consider putting football players in this mix because, with people like Gerard and 100 more in the U.S., that people really know who the potential walk-ons are.
You might not know who a pole vaulter is, but you're going to that guy did. Some guys came from high schools that didn't even have football
or whatever sport. They just made up. But apparently the leeway academically in terms of test scores and that was lower. So if a kid, I think there was some mention that said we've got to put him in as a football player because he isn't going to academically, his scores wouldn't pass muster in any of the other sports. That football has a little bit lower, basement in terms of how far low you can go with scores. So I guess a couple of them, they had to make them look like they were football players. I think they weren't worried about the coaches finding out because none of these kids were going to ever try out for the team.
Yeah,
these weren't legitimate walk-ons. These were just people that were going to, if they got them in school, they were vanishing.
Right, Mike. And that's the big question, though, Mike, is because I think USC is unique, if I'm not mistaken, that if a coach is involved, then like the Rick Singer could go to the coach and like, hey, we need to get him in. So the coach could say, yeah, he'll be on our team, but he's not going to tell the rest of the team, that. So if it's a coach doing it, but you're talking about an administrator now, like she's the one that's getting them to that subcommittee for admissions. The whole point is just to get them in as admissions. But then they're like, well, then there was questions that came up. Like one of the kids didn't even know. And the counselor was like, oh, so you're on the track team. And he's like, the student's like, no, I'm not on the track team. So like the kid didn't even know. So there's some weird. So how does that work? Sometimes like if it comes through, like I think Donna would have to try to block that wherever it happened. And then some of the testimony from Rick Singer was, well, then we'll make up an injury or say that, basically quit the team right away. The whole point was just admissions.
I think that did happen. I think they were, because apparently no one checked and said, well, you gave us these people that were going to do this, and none of them did this.
Right.
But somebody apparently checked in a basketball walk-on maybe and said, what's the deal? We haven't seen this person. And they had to scramble, and I guess they've got the wiretaps and all that from the FBI, and they made up an injury and said, oh, that person got injured over the summer or whatever. So yeah, I don't think, but I think the thing that really is so disappointing is the complete faith that USC had in Donna Heinel, that she had complete control of that process, and nobody checked on her. Nobody, the coaches didn't know exactly. So she had, USC put all their faith in her to do her job, and then this is what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't violate some trust like that.
Yeah, okay. Now a follow up. Who was on the committee, and didn't they? I mean, she's been doing it for. Was there nobody out there like gave a wink? Was it a wink and a nod from other people on the committee, or how many people are on the committee, or of this subcommittee that does the approval?
I saw that it was like maybe the head of admissions and two staffers in the department were kind of the meeting that they would have.
I think the whole point is you have to dupe them. So I think I don't think the committee people were involved. I think they have to do everything to make it look like these are real athletes. And maybe the committee wasn't as, their standards weren't as high as they should be. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more checking now. It's going to be over, but yeah, it's crazy.
Like if you said one of the girls was a potential crew member, and you looked at her and it was so obvious this was never remotely going to happen.
Poorly photoshopped pictures, like this. You can't make this up, Mike. It's Mike and Silver Lake, right?
Yeah, Mike and Silver
Mike
Lake.
and Silver Lake. You cannot make this up, and USC is involved in it again. What is going on?
Yeah, the Photoshop is that's just.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
If you wrote that into a plot,
Who appointed this woman to this position?
Pat Hayden.
This was from Pat Hayden. A lot of the stuff is from Pat Hayden, but I think some of it's like under Swan.
He put a lot of faith in her.
Yeah.
I mean, Pat kind of allowed her to kind of have her own area where she was just totally in charge, and I don't think she had to answer to a lot of people. I think she was, and this is kind of
which
the
is like the common
at
theme in the athletic
USC.
department. There's people that don't answer to a lot of people. So
And it's starting
Really?
at the top. I mean, who does the
all right,
athletic
Mike,
director?
we're gonna have to let you go, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, you got a lot of follow-up questions. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to
Thanks
take
for
you
calling.
off.
I don't know. Thank you. I found it very informative. Thank you very
Good
much.
start,
Thanks,
Mike.
Thanks for
Thank
calling,
you.
Mike. But just from looking at YouTube's reaction alone, like, what do you say for USC fans? They're angry and embarrassed. I mean, I know Bill Plaschke just wrote a column saying you got to get rid of Lynn Swann. I mean, do you expect
Stuart Mandel absolutely barbecued the athletic department.
Do you expect, like, if USC ever gets a new president, do you expect the new president to come in and reevaluate, maybe clean house? Is that what's needed here?
I mean, you have to. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you. Like that, you have to bring in some strong presence, and they have to reevaluate everything. Do like what Baylor did after the sexual assault scandal. I mean, they just wiped the slate clean. I think USC athletics at this point is like that. Like, you just got to look, start fresh. You need some outside influences that know what they're doing. You need to do that. Stop getting people inside the USC family. Stop getting people that have been here forever or just Trojans for life. Or you got to stop doing that.
It's a professional operation. If your budget's more than $100 million a year. You can't have people learning on the job, and you can't have people whose basic skill set was being themselves as football stars or whatever. I mean, if that's that's what your resume says.
That's what you bring to the table.
Yeah, we don't need that. USC is famous, as we see in every one of these cases. USC is pretty famous, so USC doesn't need anybody. They're in there because they're famous. They need them because they're a professional at what they do. My hope on the president is that whoever gets to that point doesn't need to spend a lot of time evaluating. You would hope that the guy or gal who takes that job has been spending a lot of time getting up to speed, so that there's not going to be a lot of time to have to figure out what to do. I mean, I've heard that some of the candidates are very much up to speed on what needs to be done. what it says now is USC really has to get the right person, because they got to get somebody who has enough clout and enough, to use that word gravitas, that they can come in and say, we're going to do this, 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 and this. Boom, just like
Right.
that. I've done it before, which, makes you think you'd like to have somebody who said maybe has been at a Big Ten school, or a school
Right.
where, a big, powerful school where they've done things right and they know how to do it, and they're not hiring football stars. I mean, basically, with John McKay, you could see that, and Bear Bryant and those guys, they would also let him be athletic director because they didn't want him to have to report to anybody. But that's so far gone that USC still, for the last 25 years, following that model of take an old.
Those were at least coaches, though. These are just like former players that really have no other things on their resume to be an athletic director besides they played football there.
Yeah.
And the problem is, Dan, who's going to choose the president? Like, it's the board of trustees who are fighting each other right now. And you have the head of it who's been running the show, and there's a lot of allegations against him of railroading things in the meeting, Rick Caruso. And, so the daughter that got in on getting all that money was on his yacht early. I mean, I don't have a lot of faith that group. There's probably some people in the board of trustees that really want to do the right thing, but it's divided right now. And
like the last we heard of them, they were basically throwing chairs at one another in the Board of Trustees meeting. Then it went away. I mean, there has been radio silence for about 3 weeks.
I think they realized that they were
don't know
becoming
what
a laughing
they're doing.
stock. Yeah.
I mean, we don't know if they're trying to
Billionaires fighting each other.
Yeah, got billionaires on each side, and that's probably not a good look either. So I don't think we even have any idea where this is going right now. I mean, and it's
You almost have to get lucky. You got to get like Pete Carroll lucky that somehow they bring in a president that's just like, oh, wow, that guy was amazing. Didn't really think he would be. And he did what you needed to do to fix things, because the culture there isn't right now. It's obviously not right.
My hope, you hate to say this to people, is I just hope they get lucky. I'm not past that part anywhere now. I just, maybe they'll get lucky, and that's in like almost every area, every place you look. You're saying, oh boy, if only, maybe
they'll get lucky.
Will they get it right? Who? And I've said this so many times that, it's an absolute cliche, but people who say, why can't USC get it right? Why can't they get the answers right? And I say, because they don't know what the questions are.
Yeah.
If you don't know what the questions are, you're not going to have an answer. And it's really hard to talk to people who you really don't think understand what's going on. They just don't get it.
Yeah.
And I mean, they understood money was important. And I think, Max, the USC needed that $7 billion fundraising campaign, the biggest in higher education and all that. Did that drive too much else at the school? I mean, did that become, so...
That became priority one. And
so much a priority. Did other things
that you neglected things that were...
Get lost along the way or whatever. And because Pete Carroll came in, and basically on his own, not great facilities when he was there, not great support, he just kind of, he had Southern California, he had all the athletes, and he got it right. And I think there were people who thought, wow, we can just do anything and we're going to be fine. And it's not that easy. Pete proved that there were people, very happy to see Pete go, and that we'll just duplicate that.
No, that's not easy.
So someone asked this on YouTube. I tried to go back and find it, so apologies to whoever asked it. But they want to know, so what happens with the students who are at USC right now who are caught up in this scandal?
There was a statement that came out today, right?
Yeah, Wanda Austin sent a letter to students and alumni saying basically it's going to be evaluated case by case, and we'll go from there. But they said that anyone who was wrongfully admitted will be dealt with. So that's what it seems like as of now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that really seems unfair is some of the kids had no idea that this was happening.
You just feel bad for them because they think that they got there on their own merit, and then it looks your parents didn't even have the faith to believe in you to get there. They had to go.
I do think one interesting comment was made the other day by Professor Alan Dershowitz, who talked about how when he started at Harvard 60 years ago, he said, you couldn't even think about doing something like this, because if you got people into Harvard or wherever, these elite schools, and they didn't belong there, they were going to flunk out. He said, there's no problem now. Nobody flunks out.
Yeah.
If you get them in, they're going to stay. If they just even try a little bit, they won't probably flunk out, because he said that's not what happens. They don't, a lot of classes, they don't even give grades. There's not the penalty for bringing somebody in who doesn't belong now that there would have been, half a century ago. It just, you can figure out a way to get through.
And I think the culture is this way because it is so much harder to get into schools now. And we were talking before, like my classmate at USC, when he got his PhD in electrical engineering, he was like the answer book for us. He was like, I beat him on one test in my career, and I just never let him forget it. It was like crazy. His kid had 4 point whatever, great grades. His dad, PhD from USC, like didn't get in. His best friend had perfect SAT and ACT scores and a 4.6 GPA, was a concert pianist, valedictorian of his high school in the Bay Area, and didn't get into USC. Like those are the kind of things that are happening. Like it's that hard. So then it creates this market that, we're going to pay a couple $100,000. I'm going to get my kid in there. It's just strange,
It's getting crazier each year too. It's a sense of pride for universities to be like, our acceptance rate is low.
Yeah,
And
I think it's 13% at USC. So like they deny a lot of people. And
So
you don't want a situation where the plus for you in the job is turning people down. And it's like, oh, that's a good mark. And that's
they're proud of it.
We turned down this many valedictorians. Like, that's not cool.
So we have a live caller.
Oh, nice.
Apparently, his name is Bobby from Los Angeles. He's apparently a big Dan Weber fan.
Hey, Bobby.
Hi,
Bob.
Ryan, Keely. Dan, this is Bobby, who's emailed you and thinks the world of you.
Thank you.
I mean, I've been spoiled my entire life from Ralph Lauren, Gary Klein, now Dan Weber. I'm telling you, I'm a huge Dan Weber fan.
Oh, nice. We don't like Gary Klein, though. No, we're just kidding. Gary is like the best. He's like the nicest guy in there.
Bobby is reading that exactly the way I wrote it. Thank you, Bobby.
He's going to Venmo you tomorrow.
Now, there's two points I'm dying to find out that no one's yet discussed about this. Number one, where is all the publicity about USC hiring the most compliance officers? Number one. And number two is lack of institutional control. Doesn't the NCAA have a penchant for punishing USC? What can happen with this and the Tony Bland scandal? I mean, think about the potential of where the punishment NCAA could take us.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think the NCAA has made it clear how they are going to get involved with the basketball scandal. They really don't know what to do about basketball. Yeah. Basketball is in a place where, they can't come down on Nike. I mean, when did Nike pull all the coaches' shoe contracts in the country? I mean, so they're treading very lightly on what they're going to do about all the information that came out in the basketball. Although I do think they are going to use the all of the transcripts and wiretaps and all of that. I don't know what they're going to use it for. The thing about what's going to happen with this scandal. I mean, if you look at, for example, the most recent example of academic scandal was the University of North Carolina. They went for years, decades of thousands of students taking bogus courses in a bogus department. And North Carolina said, you can't come in and talk to us about academics. If we want to say those are good courses, they're good courses. And the NCAA said, oh, okay, it's up to you. So I'm not sure the NCAA is in a place where they can come down in any, because there was no academic benefit for USC whatsoever. I mean, zero benefit at all.
As far as the sports stuff, I don't see that being a thing. As far as the compliance stuff goes, that is really interesting because USC did spend and has spent a lot of money on compliance. Now we saw Baylor, like what we mentioned Baylor earlier, they created this bigger Title IX department. Like they're really working on the compliance side of things. I think the compliance people are making sure that nobody gets an extra bagel or whatever is going around there, but they let something like this that's huge like just slide by, let people get into the school. So yeah, I don't think they were focused on this, Bobby.
Yeah, I think USC's been pretty good in terms of compliance for their students or their athletes. Not so good about their employees. I mean, if you want to go back to, the real scandals, the medical school and the student health service and all of that, apparently nobody was there's no compliance there. I
Yeah.
mean, that might be a place where you might want to spend a little more time with compliance at USC than checking the kinds of minutia that the NCAA says you've got to deal with. I mean, it's just some of the rulings are so incredible that it just it makes no sense at all. I don't know that USC's all that exposed, Bobby. I don't think they are, but I think somebody in athletics ought to figure out a way that this could never happen again. And if that means that everything, for example, if that means everything that goes to the admissions committee has to go through compliance, let's say, where there's a compliance person whose responsibility is to check the legitimacy of every one of those people that's
Is that guy really a pole vaulter?
Yeah. Well, that's the craziness. Pole vaulting, I mean, they were pretty slick in most of what they did, but to say somebody's a pole vaulting is the most technique-heavy individual thing you can do in sports. I mean, it is the hardest single thing. You either are a pole vaulter or you aren't.
I'm on the phone. I'll be with you in a minute.
And obviously, the other thing you wouldn't think you would pick a sport where there are actual standards. So you would say, if somebody says I'm a pole vaulter, you say, oh, how high have you pole? What's your, you have to have some like basic. It's not like water polo where you don't know exactly. You don't have the same kind of measurables.
Yeah.
Pole vaulting. That's crazy that they picked pole vaulting.
And they photoshopped a water polo player, like of a guy standing like in the low end of the pool. Like they're never like this far out of the water. It's like, it was just so bad. So that means that no one was really checking anything. So I agree. Like they got to go through some kind of compliance or something.
Yeah.
But,
Well, thanks for the call.
This will change for sure. Yeah. Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks, Bobby, for the call. But I mean, Bobby kind of touched on this, but what does it look like going forward? I mean, is this something that Clay Helton has to address at all, or no? Does the athletic department specifically address it? Does Lynn Swan address it?
We haven't heard from Lynn Swan.
What does it look like going forward for USC?
I mean, I don't know. Can Clay? I would tell Clay. I would advise Clay. On Tuesday, if somebody asked him, say, "I have no idea who they were. Never heard about them. Didn't know that happened." Blah blah blah. I would make sure people knew that I had nothing to do with it, because if you look at the other sports that were involved, those coaches are in trouble. I mean, those coaches were complicit. So I would think of all the people that would be mad, Clay Helton would be the maddest. That they actually threw guys in on football walk-on situations, because people pay attention to who's walking on in football. And if there's even a hint that he had anything to do with that or knew about it, man. So he should be very, very upset. And I would come out if I were him, and I would just say, absolutely, had nothing to do, didn't know about it. It's, I can't believe they did it.
Yeah. So the thing is so you're talking about, it's with Jovan Vavic. Yeah. So he is maybe the most successful coach in the NCAA, not of any coach.
History of every sport.
16 national championships. He's fired, so he's gone. So USC, you're talking about being a water polo school. I mean, maybe they'll win championships again, but he was the guy winning it for both the men and the women.
And he gets arrested. He gets arrested on Waikiki Beach.
Yeah, they're going to play Hawaii. He gets arrested there. So he's gone. So that's impacted. Now, there were students. We don't think football. I don't think any football coach would say, "Yeah, I want to get an extra $25,000. I'll pretend." I'm not saying that, but I don't think anything like that happened. But if someone in one of the other sports where players got in, because USC is unique, it wasn't just I think at UCLA it was like the men's soccer guy. He got some guys in for his team. When you have an athletic administrator, she was getting for multiple teams. If any of those coaches were involved, now they're going to get sucked into this. I think USC is going to change a lot of policies. They don't have any choice to do that. I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on football and stuff, but it's just another cloud over everything. And I think there's more pressure on the athletic department as a whole with Lynn Swan and going forward. But yeah, I don't think football is really going to be much involved in this.
And then you have an interim president who's never been involved with higher education before. And she's in the middle of this, having to write letters and try to come up with, these are the kinds of things that you need to come up with an answer tomorrow, yesterday, whatever. I mean, and that's kind of unfair almost. You know, she's somebody from the aerospace industry. They probably needed to have a president by now.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think if you had, if you go read Stuart Mandel's column on the Athletic where he calls Lynn Swann, I think, like dangerously underqualified or whatever. And that's, I mean, it's nice. It's like, oh, you got Lynn Swann as your athletic director, but he's never done anything like this before. I think at other universities, you're going to hear from the athletic director by now when there's much is going wrong. And you're basically the person right under you was taking $1.3 million in bribes, and your most successful coach you've ever had, or the school's ever had, it was taking bribes. And I mean, this is something that needs to be addressed. And I think if you had an experienced athletic director, they'd be like, okay, here's what we got to do. Now he's going to be relying on the people below him, like, hey, what should we do here? Yeah. And one of those people right below him was one of the ones involved in this. So I just think it's a problem with the USC leadership, and that's why you do need a new president, and you just need to clean things up all around.
Agreed. I got a reminder that Joey Kaufman did tweet at the Vegas Pac-12 tournament that Lynn Swann did not want to comment on the situation.
Oh, he didn't
when
want to
asked
comment
about
okay.
it. So far, that's all we've gotten from Lynn Swann.
So he was there.
No comment. Yeah,
I think he and Steve Lopes were
yes.
both at the tournament.
Yeah, Lynn Swann.
Yeah, I don't want to comment. Why would you?
No big deal.
Yeah, so
it's just a bad look. The optics are terrible, and it just looks like they don't know what they're doing over and over and over again. And the reason is because they don't know what they're doing. Yeah, like that's why.
Reason for that.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts on this topic as a whole before we move on to the actual football part?
Yeah, I guess we went kind of long on that, but
I mean, it's a scandal.
Keep the questions coming. Yeah, call 1-5124-TUNNEL if you want a live call. And then you can put your hashtag TunnelVision on Twitter.
Yep.
And, of course, on YouTube, Keely can pull up some questions. Do we have any YouTube questions? We
do. I'm getting there. I just want to make sure we were done on the...
Well, I was just thinking, it's like your house is on fire and there's no one at the fire department, okay? They went out somewhere else. And, what are you going to... You need to put the fire out right now. And there's no one there to put the fire out. It's a problem.
True. Yes.
So first off, I just want to get both of you, Ryan, you're only there for Tuesday. Dan, you were there for all 3 days. What were your thoughts about USC's start to spring camp?
I think we're both fairly optimistic of just what we saw early, and then from the reports I read and stuff from the Thursday, Friday. We were in Shotgun. He's in Vegas right now, but that's the reason we didn't really talk about that. Can we say that?
Yes, I made it public on Instagram. We both did. Shotgun got married. That's why he has been MIA this whole time. He will be back. We'll be back for normal Tunnel Vision next Wednesday. So be sure to stay tuned.
But that's where we're going. But
that's where we were.
I think you needed. I don't think the USC made enough changes in the offseason, especially to match what Lynn Swann was saying about culture, scheme, and discipline and all that kind of stuff. So you feel like with the changes that they made on the coaching staff that you needed to make some major changes the way you prepare on the practice field. And I think they have. I think, just from what we've seen so far in this first week, I feel a little bit more optimistic. I think letting Graham Harrell just come in and run his stuff. I know he's a young coach. I know he's at North Texas, but he has a scheme. He has a system, and I think his system is more efficient and lends itself to more success at the college level than whatever USC was running gumbo stuff before. So I think that's going to be helpful. I think simplifying the defense is certainly helpful. And it just seems like, I don't think everything's perfect, but I think it's running a lot better than what we saw, certainly from last spring.
I know I've heard this from somebody. I think the people that run the opening said that of all the quarterbacks who ever come through there, they thought Graham Harrell was the smartest. That he was the guy of everybody that got the most and picked it up. And he's really impressive. The fact that he just had the sense that I think I'll go up on Dedo, put the headsets on, and start calling plays.
I love that.
And he said, I'm practicing what I'm going to be doing in games. And then he went off, whatever. I don't know how much of a script they had, but about half of it was unscripted. And the other thing you're seeing is, there were 8 Pac-12 officials there for the whole practice Saturday. I think I saw one flag. I didn't see any busted plays. I didn't see any guys jumping off sides. It was like, who is this? What are we doing here? It's different. I mean, and I know people say, you're always no. We didn't say that about last spring. Last spring we basically said maybe they could just stop right now because they're getting worse every day. Stop it. Put us out.
There really wasn't any. The quarterback play was so bad last spring. I think it made it hard for everything else. But just the way they did it too didn't help.
It was so. There was so little focus, and it was the gumbo, just dumped on everybody's head. This year, it's smart. I mean, what they're doing is smart, and now it happens to fit the talent that they've got. But all four quarterbacks look pretty good. I mean, the freshman Keaton Slovis comes in, and it's like, oh, he looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, they make it easy for the quarterbacks. The reads. I mean, I know that just from watching it, at least the second and third days, you get the sense in your head of how the play is going to develop and what's going to be where, and you just get this kind of picture, and you think, when the quarterbacks, are seeing that a lot better than I am, but you get a sense of where things are going to be and how they're going to open, and having the four wide receivers means you get Devin Williams on the field as the fourth wide receiver, and what a mismatch he is for whoever is trying to defend him. I mean, they've got a lot of mismatches. Pittman is a mismatch at 6'4". Tyler Vaughn's, the way he can jump, is a mismatch. Amon-Ra, obviously, all the things he does is a mismatch. So you've got a lot of mismatches there. You've got a quarterback now, whoever it is reading pre-snap. Doesn't have to be worried where the heck's the ball going to go. Both
that helps.
Both centers, the ball is right there. It's impressive. I like the Graham Harrell hire. I don't know that I was prepared. I think he isn't even prepared for how well and how quickly they picked up the offense. I mean, he's like, whoa. And now he's never coached players this good.
Right.
So he maybe didn't know. But I think he's like, wow.
It's almost like these players were like anxious to be coached well. You know
that's
what I mean?
one of the comments for Joe DeForest had that really good comment. He said, these guys really want to be coached.
That would have been nice before.
Right. Of course, Joe had to sit out last year, so he said, "Man, I really missed that," But he said these guys really look like they want to be coached, and I don't know, would anybody have ever said that last year? I just don't. So, and you get a sense that they come back, day after day after day, and they're getting better. And I don't know that we had that sense last year that, okay, they're better after this practice than they were after yesterday's practice or whatever. The stuff they're doing is kind of measurable. You can't do it unless you do it full speed. What that does is that also gets the defense up to full speed. And they've got a lot of guys on defense that can run around. Well, we haven't seen the offense and defensive lines really hit one another, but we've seen a lot more emphasis on movement and stop and start and footwork and those kinds of skills that I don't think we saw before. And they're incorporating, we did some special things, teams work that you and I probably haven't been big fans of, especially in spring. But what they did was they were doing kickoff returns, and they incorporated dropping the big linemen so that they would get in position when the return man was making his cut. And so they were running, they were getting their bodies turned, they were, and they're just, doing it again and again and again. So you get this kind of, you don't have to think about it. You just do it. It becomes very comfortable in terms of the, kickoff return guy and where he cuts off of the blockers and the blockers where they have to be. And you're getting these big guys running and moving. And I don't think we saw that enough last year where the big people got a chance to move around much. They kind of just lumbered around.
Yeah.
And
I like the reactionary stuff too, where you can make adjustments during the practice, where I felt before there was just like, this is what we do. And it was sort of like, but if someone makes a mistake, hey, we can correct it now and do, stop doing this, go do that, whatever. I feel like before it was just like, nope, well, next up is this. And it's like you're taking a driving test and you're driving along, you like drive through a red light. You're like, okay, it's time to parallel park. You're like, well, you just drove through a red light. Well, no, but parallel parking's next, you know? So I think that's what USC was doing. Now it's like, you just went through a red light, stop. We can't do that. Let's go back. And that wasn't happening before.
Well, they are pulling guys out. If you commit a penalty, you're coming out. I mean, that's Clay's responsibility at this point. Or somebody's going to be talking to you.
Yeah.
And we didn't see much of that at all last year. And the fact that they've had officials at all 3 practices, they said they were going to, and they've done that. Last year, almost never did we see any officials there.
Right.
And so I think that helps make the point. But there just haven't been many penalties, and there haven't been, there are almost no turnovers.
There was a bunch of the first day, and then it kind of tapered off, right?
No,
they got used to we're going to get flagged. Let's not do it.
Yeah. After day one, because they're even running, officials on the, like the one-on-one patterns and stuff like that. Yeah. So I mean,
a lot of penalties there.
There were a lot of holding, a lot of grabbing, because it looked like last year there wasn't any of that Thursday and Saturday.
Yeah.
Doesn't take a long time. There would be where they would go up to the official and say, was that okay, or am I allowed to do that? And the guy'd say, well, and they gave him a couple of, passes a little bit, but, there was that kind of conversation going on. Again, we had never seen that.
Yeah, I mean, that's way better. If you want to try to address discipline, that's way better than we're going to have a meeting about it. Like, we have 3 days of all officials at practice. I think that's, at least you're trying,
Yeah, and beforehand, they would do wide receivers versus DBs, and the DBs would practice continually holding.
Yeah.
And then do it in games. Like, why are you surprised? Because they're
Right.
doing it in practice, So you're actually getting instant feedback that you shouldn't do that and shouldn't do that on Saturdays.
Nice.
Right. I mean, and you have to have those guys. They have to have those officials there.
Yeah.
Because, you got the wide receiver coach and the running back and the DB coach. You don't want them arguing with one another whether it was or not. You just have a guy, and he drops it if it, this is how. And basically what they're saying is, if I'm calling you in a game, this is what I'm calling.
Yeah.
So we can argue about that, but you're still getting called.
Right.
So
you can't argue in the game.
don't
so
do it.
Yeah.
So I think everything with, from Graham Harrell calling the plays to just the way they're doing it is much more like the games. And could we have harped on that anymore last year, that practices weren't like games and practices weren't getting them prepared for games? And now it looks like they are.
Yeah.
So we're pretty upbeat, I think, at this point. How physical will they get? If you've got good athletes running around fast, you're going to have contact. And you're going to have some real physicality. But how much that carries over to the offensive line, the defensive line, I think we still have to see that.
Yeah. So I want to get to some YouTube questions.
Yes.
We've been ignoring them a little bit. So
Sorry,
YouTube.
YouTube.
Just to make sure we keep our answers a little bit brief. Derek says, who looked good on Saturday? And then Full Count also said, we didn't get any instant analysis on Saturday because of the wedding. What's your instant analysis, Dan, of not so instant analysis of Saturday's scrimmage?
I tried to get Trevino to do it, but he said no. He's like, ha, ha, ha.
So I just think the ability to not have busted plays, the ability to not commit penalties. I think we keep seeing Devin Williams, for example, is just a load. I mean, he's able to play fast. It's he's not having to think. He just goes out and plays, and you realize, how are you going to match up with this guy? And he's the fourth. I mean, and I'm not putting him ahead of the other guys. I'm just saying those four, pretty good 4 guys out there. I just thought everything's going faster. The pickup has really been good. I just very impressed with how they picked it up, and they're having fun doing it. It looks like. I mean, it looks like it's fun for them to do it at this speed. And I kind of tell people, they're not teaching them to run plays. They're teaching them how to play.
Yes.
And that's the Graham Harrell influence. Because, when you listen to what Graham said, it's pretty much don't do what they did last year. It's kind of like, we're going to do it. The 4 running plays, that's all we need. And we're going to work on getting those things perfect as opposed to adding more plays. We don't need to add more plays. We need to get these that we've got perfect. And I think the fact that what you see, and even Clay, I think, was surprised. He said the ball comes out so fast that, that's the idea of this offense. But when you see it in practice, you think, really going to be hard to get to the quarterback. I mean, it's, so for all the people that worry about the offensive line, and after last year, with good reason, if you're pretty athletic and if you do the right thing all the time, the offensive line ought to be in pretty good shape in terms of pass blocking because, boom, it's just,
it's getting
the
out
ball
quicker.
is out, and the ball is out.
That's going to help. Even if the offensive line struggles, that's going to certainly help them. So.
But I think the fact that they're really focused on what they're doing, and it's the constant repetition. I think this offensive line is going to be more athletic. They got the better feet. They look like like a Clayton Bradley came back, and I thought he looked pretty good. When he was in there for Austin Jackson. I just think you got more athletes on this offensive line, and I think that's what they need. What we'd like to see more of is what are we going to see with the defense in the front, 7 or whatever. How are they going to play? And that's, I think, to be determined when we get back after this week.
Thanks for the question, Derek.
Yeah, we have a question from Corey who says, even though they're young, do you think that the secondary can actually be statistically better? And then Jasper Smith says, I know it's early, however, is the DB coaching hire of Greg Burns already paying dividends? It seems to be, in my opinion.
Well, they couldn't be any worse. 4 interceptions for the whole year last year. I mean, come on. That's just, So I'm not sure if USC goes with let's say Isaiah Palomalo and Talanoa Hufanga, and then you've got Elijah Griffin and Isaac Taylor Stewart at the corners. I think that would be the highest rated defensive backfield in history at USC if you just go by stars. If you go by, you've got 3 guys, at least top 10 guys in that group. Now, how many guys are behind him? Not a lot of guys behind him.
Yeah.
But Isaac Taylor Stewart, kind of got lost this year. But you watch him out there, his acceleration. I mean, 6'2", 205, and he's just explosive. I mean, they got to get him. Everybody got to be on the same page, and they got to be able to, to do all the things. We know Elijah Griffin has got, a lot of skill, but he's got to, he doesn't need to talk to those guys. He doesn't need to, try to come up and make every play. But and then I think the 2 safeties, I don't know if USC has ever had 2 better potential safeties playing together than Talanoa and Isaiah Palomalo.
Oh,
I mean, there is a lot of talent there. I think Greg Burns has shown already he's a real plus. He's a really good teacher. I mean, we remember him from 2003 and 4, I guess, is the last we saw of him. So he's like a different. He was really a young, kind of young pup back then, and now he's a really veteran coach, and he's serious, and there's a lot of teaching going on. So I think I'm pretty optimistic, and you just have no control over the injuries.
Yeah.
You don't know. So because you'd be dependent on some of those young guys coming in the fall, and that's. I think Chase Williams adds a lot as a slot guy too. So I think
he looks like he'll be a nickel right now. Yeah.
Yeah, a nickel guy, and so you got a lot of size there. I mean, you got a lot of 6'4", 6'2", 6'2", athletes that can run.
What are your thoughts? Ryan says, "What are your Aiden. Aiden says, what are your thoughts on Greg Johnson returning? If you don't know, Greg Johnson was not at practice on Tuesday, the first real practice of spring camp, and then suddenly he returned on Thursday, and Clay Helton confirmed that Greg Johnson is out of the transfer portal, so he's back. What are your guys' thoughts on that development?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. So he did enter the transfer portal, and once you're in there, you're still in there, but you can withdraw, and that's what he did. He withdrew from the portal, so he's back. I don't think there's a hard set rule that you can't practice with the team if you're in there. I think for I think most
USC
colleges
rule.
wouldn't want you to be able to do that. I know Keely Ross, he's still around. He's not practicing, and he hasn't gone anywhere yet. He's still taking a course or 2 at USC. But the fact that they get Greg Johnson back, I think you're going to add a lot of depth in the fall. But, he has some experience, and I think having him now, especially in the spring, is going to be a big help. And I think transfer portal is going to change some because there's just way too many guys in the portal and just not enough the math doesn't work out. There's way too many scholarships out there. And I think for someone like Greg Johnson, like, hey, maybe the situation isn't exactly what I want, but this is still probably the best thing I'm going to get. And he has a lot of great opportunities. So it seems to make a lot of sense.
Hey, he doesn't have to sit out a year. You look at him, he's just bigger and more mature looking. And he looks like the kind of guy that could play all three positions if you really needed him to do that. And you would like him maybe to grow into that kind of a role where he would be, kind of the guy that could do all that because of his, his physicality and all of that.
He's got like a thickness to him, I would say. Yeah.
And, just the toughness and all of that. And I just think by far, when you look at USC's roster, it would be the best option. And I do think Clay, one of the messages he gave to the players when he talked to them recently was there are 3,000 players in the transfer portal, and there are nowhere near that many scholarships available. So, and who knows?
They're going to have to tweak that because this isn't good for the players. Like if you got a lot of guys that are kind of stuck in limbo now.
I know. I mean, so you could see, would some others come back? Maybe. I guess there's that possibility. But I think it was a good thing that Greg got it started. That it was like, okay, you can come back, and now what USC still only has 3 scholarships that are out there. I mean, they don't have a lot of scholarships.
No, there might only be like one. I have to go back and take a look. Yeah, because John Jackson was a late, we didn't get like confirmation that I believe he's on scholarship.
I think the way they announced it, they didn't announce it.
And Brew McCoy still counts. Like Brew McCoy was an initial counter. He's not, so he comes in as an initial counter. So he took one of those spots too.
So that somebody could, start on his scholarship next
in the fall
year.
or something. Yeah.
But so, USC has more guys in the transfer portal than it has scholarships available. And that basically, I think, is in a microcosm. That's what the whole college football world looks like.
Yeah.
So we have a question. We have some interesting comments from some people.
Okay.
They think that we are we're drinking the Kool-Aid too much. They think that we're too optimistic this spring, and we're easily convinced. What do you say, Dan, to that criticism that
USC's going undefeated?
That we're switching sides too fast. Not sides.
Don't save that drop.
I think all we can do fairly is tell you what we see and how it compares. I don't think. Please, again, I said, do not cash in your, whatever it is. What is it, 401?
401k.
401 and jump in a car and go to Las Vegas and bet on the over for USC. I mean, these are not promises. They're not predictions. These are, we got to go to practice today. Here's what we saw. Here's how they're doing it well, or they're picking it up quickly, or this doesn't look like last year, or we like what, Graham Harrell is bringing or whatever. That's all. I wouldn't allow yourself to get any more than feeling like you feel about what you know about the last practice that you heard. Don't take it any farther than that. The easy part, though, is, wow, if they're practicing well and they look like they're getting better. Oh, and by the way, they have the best players in the Pac-12. You can put those two together and say, if they've got this and this, what does that mean? And that's for you to do. That's not for us necessarily to do. I'm the person that says, when everybody says, oh my God, those first 6 games, how are they going to get through? They're going to be 1-5. They're going to be da. And I think it's the Pac-12. I know they're going to have a chance. They got the best players.
Yeah.
Was last year absolutely unbelievable? Disappointing and a disaster. Yeah, it was. It was hard to coach. I mean, had they not been coached at all, had they been coached by themselves, I don't see them doing any worse than what they did.
That's fair.
If they had just showed up every day and said, this is what we're going to do. So last year was a disaster, but they still have really good players, and they've got some new coaches that are pretty sharp.
Yeah.
And they look like they're working together. I don't think last year's staff ever kind of got together, and I can understand why. If I were on that staff last year, I wouldn't have been happy either. I mean, it was not an easy place to be. So, it's a different world this year. So just take it for what it's worth. That's all. Take it for today's practice, and then next, practice, and just go for there. But don't take it into anywhere else.
So our CG system is a little funky right now, so sorry about that. We have a question from DM49ers who says, "What the heck is taking so long for USC to hire a new president, Dan? And why does it seem like this podcast has more information on that than the university itself?"
I think we just don't know what's going on with the Board of Trustees. I mean, we really don't. And maybe they have their guy and maybe their gal, and maybe they're saying, I'm just thinking, are they having to do some, real, convincing that this place isn't in as bad a shape as it looks like it's, and all that.
You got to do like a sales job. Kind of thing.
I mean, and you would hope that whoever is, one of those real finalists, has been paying a lot of attention to USC. And you would have a lot of questions, and so closing the deal might be interesting. And we don't know is there an agenda for, some of the people on the Board of Trustees? I mean, would, the less terrific a president, maybe then the less you need the Board of Trustees to kind of, run the show. And is there some sense at the Board of Trustees that maybe they'd still like to kind of run the show?
Yeah.
And is
that would be bad.
Having to give that up. So, I wish I had an answer. I don't know. I mean, we know what we think we know as far as maybe who some of the people are, but I don't think we know exactly what they're thinking about it, because the people you would want for that job are probably almost completely all in really, really good jobs right now.
Right.
And they don't want anybody to know that they're, really, really, considering making this move. But so there is no information, basically, officially, to be had, in terms of the presidential search, as is probably the right thing. But we know who we'd probably like to see, and we'd probably don't want to mess it up if we push that too hard.
Do we have any television tweets, hashtag tweets?
We do. I'll get to this next one.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I have it loaded. Jesse Garcia Signs says, Do you three think that Fink and Sears really had a fair chance at winning the starting spot, or is JT Daniels Helton's new love of his life?
I mean, I think if it's up to Clay Helton, it's probably going to be JT Daniels. But I feel like if Graham Harrell comes in and says, you know what, I saw 15 practices and Jack Sears just is the guy for me, I think they'll be able to do that. As long as he has the power that Clay Helton says he has, and from watching practice, it seems like he does the way they're running things. I think it's still open, and even like a Slova, Keelan Slovis came in and has looked pretty good too. So it doesn't seem like, just from watching, that there's going to be some kind of limitation there. I think if it was up to Clay Helton, it would be JT Daniels. I'm not sure what Graham Harrell's going to do.
Yeah, and they will still probably tell you that Clay will make the decisions on starting and all of that. I don't know that that's. I mean, for example, last year, both Jack and Matt Fink had all of spring. Okay, so if you say, did they get a fair chance? Well, they had all of spring, and then they divided up the fall equally,
pretty evenly,
knowing that JT was going to emerge. And so they probably cost JT the ability. I mean, he'd hardly thrown the ball to Michael Pittman, for example. So I think that's overstated that, that those guys didn't get a fair shot. I could see, for example, maybe Jack Sears not winning the job this year, getting a degree and transferring as a grad transfer and going somewhere, and he'd have 2 years of eligibility and having a really good career as a quarterback somewhere else because of his skill set. Is he, perfectly set up for this? I would think this offense more caters to JT's skill set. I mean, I just think he's got, more of the things you want, in this skill set. But they're all getting they're getting completely the same opportunities at this point in time. They're all the rotation. I mean, they were having trouble getting 3 quarterbacks in the way they were doing it. They're not having any trouble getting 4 in now.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's how different things are. How many more throws? They do 4 quarterbacks all throwing at a time in specialty passing. I mean, people would have gotten hurt if they'd have tried to do that last year with everybody running at once. So I think there'll be a fair shot. I think JT has to be, the leader in the clubhouse and all that. But
JT looked the best running the gumbo offense in practice last year. Now it's simpler. I think JT's going to excel like he has been, but I think it might help like a Jack Sears or something too. So we'll see how he responds to that. But it wasn't even close. When you watch practice, like it was, like Dan said, those guys had all the spring. They had head start on JT. JT comes in and was just better.
It seemed like there was this revisionist narrative that started to pop up just because USC's offense wasn't successful, that somehow JT was the problem and he was an implant and that's why it was going wrong. It was the gumbo offense was not good.
Yeah.
And people forget all of spring, and we reported Jack Sears and Fink just were not standing out. And so they had that whole time to get a leg up if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I would describe the spring practice as, follow the bouncing ball. Boom, boom, boom. They weren't catching a lot of them. And not necessarily the quarterback's fault. I mean, it was more the offense's fault. I think one of the things, like last year, how many chances did JT have to throw the ball to people who were open? I mean, every pass was contested.
Yeah.
I mean, and how did he know? A, he starts out, he doesn't know where the snap's going to be. B, he doesn't know who's going to break down at the line of scrimmage. And then C, he doesn't know who's going to be open because of the patterns didn't really, lend themselves to that. So, I think the difference, like JT, if you're defending JT, you have to essentially defend sideline to sideline, 50-some yards, 50 yards deep, because he can throw the ball 50 yards deep, this sideline or that side. That's like whatever it is, 2,500 square yards, as opposed to the other quarterbacks. You don't have to defend nearly that much field when they're out there. Now, obviously, Jack has got great feet and great athleticism, and is a threat. And Matt is got that leadership and can run the ball, but JT, just because of the things he can do, puts a lot more pressure on a defense. But we'll see. In this offense, I don't think we know how this offense completely plays out. But JT's the leader going in, even though they are scrupulously giving everybody the same opportunities.
Yeah,
scrupulously. They'll start with Keaton Slovis someday. We'll go first.
Yeah,
and they rotate them in. They're doing a nice job of that.
While we're on the topic of QBs, Jasper Smith says, will JT actually develop and go through his regressions this season, or will he just target his primary receiver?
See, that was another, I think, canard that if you're JT, and first of all, he tried to be able to scan the field pre-snap and hope that the ball was going to be there, and then he realized it could be here, it could be there, it could be. So he realized, I got to keep my eyes on the ball. I'm playing goalie or shortstop or whatever. And then he had to go get it wherever it was. So he kind of lost a little bit of the pre-snap read and the post-snap read. So now, and not knowing kind of absolutely if there was going to be a breakdown at the line of scrimmage and protection, if you were JT, you would do the thing that he did. You would try to guess who's going to be open. Yeah. And you would concentrate on that guy. You would say, this play against this defense, I think it's going to be this guy. So that became to people, oh, he's staring down his no, he won't go through his progressions. That I would throw that out. I just think that was really unfair. But that became, one of these, criticism. He staring down his receiver. Yeah, he should have stayed in there 3 more, seconds and got hit 4 more times. And the guys weren't open anyway. I mean, it's like, oh, how many guys did he miss that were really wide open? Not many. So I would discard that. I just think that's not a good picture of the reality of how it was last year.
We have a Twitter question from SC Trojans 13 that is not showing up on the screen. He says, what are your starting front 7 predictions?
Well, I like it that we're not going to be locked into a starting front 7 that are, that's the guys. Because I think they really are going to go too deep.
Yeah, I think it's
in
going to
the
be a
front four.
rotation.
And the front four, and I think they're going to go much more in front four. I mean, I think they're going to be a place like, say, for a Connor Murphy. I think there's going to be a place for a Drake Jackson. I think there's going to be a place for a lot of guys up front. Lichtenstein, and all the guys that played last year. So I think you're going to see more of those guys. I think inside you're going to see the combination of Palie and John Houston. And John Houston is 222 pounds now. He still looks kind of lean, but he's not a 210 pounder as he was for a while. And I like what we're seeing Solomon Tuliaupupu. I think he looks like it was a shame that he had that broken foot all fall, but he looks like he could be a real factor inside, and he gives you a 250 pounder.
Yeah.
He looks like he can hit people. And I think Kanai Mauga moving inside there, I think that looks like he's big enough, strong enough, athletic enough. I think they're really going to run to the football.
Iosefa too, right inside.
And Iosefa's inside, so you got some experienced guys inside. So we emphasize the rotation up front, but I think they're going to rotate, at linebacker as well. And I don't know. I'm not as comfortable predicting exactly how they're going to line up on the outside with the linebackers.
They're looking bigger there. Like we talked about this last week, I think, with when Alicia was on, where looking like, oh, there's Connor Murphy, and they had Drake Jackson out there. So it was it would almost look like a 4-man front, like they were going to run like a 4-2-5 or something, as opposed to where you had like the Predator kind of thing. They're like more bigger defensive linemen, like hand on the ground looking guys.
Oh yeah, I think without a doubt they're doing that. I just think they realized the UCLA game made them realize that they just didn't have enough people there to defend the edge, and they just have to be able to stop the run.
Yeah.
So
Connor Murphy could get some run here.
Yeah, I think
he's been like a forgotten guy for a long time.
He might just have grown up, and he's that 6'7" kid, and doesn't seem like he minds contact, and so I think the options. I think Clancy is not telling us how he's going to run things, but I think the marching orders are you're going to be able to rotate. You're going to be able to keep it simple enough so that you can get guys on the field right away. Like last year, not getting Palie and Talanoa on the field soon enough was a big mistake.
Yeah.
Those guys are too good. They would have been playing at Alabama. I mean, you got to get them on the field. You just can't say, well, we need more time with them. You don't have more time.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys maybe are only going to be here 3 years. You can't have them sit out their freshman year till they get up to speed on your, an NFL defense. Nope, you got to get them on the field. So I think the simplicity on the offense, I think, will carry over to the defense. You'll see a more simple and yet more aggressive defense.
Speaking of Palie Naioteote, Derek says, should EA wear the most coveted number 55?
I so don't care about numbers. I think they so don't matter.
I don't think he cares about it either,
no,
right?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got number one, right?
Did you talk about
Doesn't he
that,
have
Keely?
number one?
I didn't talk about it.
He's got
He's
number
number
one,
one,
right?
yeah.
It's a nice
I mean,
number.
to me, number one, hey.
Do you think anyone will ever get the 55
I don't
again?
know.
It
I
just doesn't
totally
seem
don't-
like a thing. Cam Smith, it was talked about on and off, and then he never got it.
35 used to be, though, a really good. They became a punter number, but it used to be a big linebacker number, like Jeff Kopp and some guys back in the day.
I totally don't think, if you're thinking about that, you're probably not thinking about the right things.
Yeah.
I would just recommend not thinking about it. Play like it, but don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's totally not something you need to be thinking about.
Interesting. Full Count Fantasy Baseball says, Dan, what home game are you most looking forward to?
That's a good question. You want it to be so that the next game. I mean, the Fresno State game, your first game in the Coliseum, the renovated Coliseum. You got a chance against a really well-coached team that's probably not going to be anywhere near as good as they were last year. But they're going to carry over that swagger of winning the Mountain West and all the games that they've been winning the last couple of years. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to the Stanford game. I think that, you get a chance to play that big game right away, and that's at home at the Coliseum. And then, the game that maybe decides the, Pac-12 South, you get Utah in there in Game 4. So now you've had 3 of your first 4 games, really can kind of set the table. And then the two focuses in the second half of the schedule. You've got Oregon coming in, which right now is the flavor of the month in the Pac-12, and then you get UCLA. And if they don't remember what happened to them last year in the Rose Bowl and make something else happen this year, so I think there are a lot of games. I mean, actually, it's a pretty good home schedule for people. If they perform, I mean, they've got a chance to do some really good things in the Coliseum, but they got to do it. Got to get ready. Got to be ready. No excuses.
No excuses.
We have a question from Trojan Fan who says, "Do we have any walk-ons that can actually have an impact this coming year?"
Oh God, walk-on questions. That's where we're at.
I mean, if you look at the DB depth, that's a fair question.
I tell you, a lot of the walk-ons are going to have an impact in practice. I mean,
yes.
With 14, I think they had 5 quarterbacks the other day and 14 receivers counting tight ends and running backs, and 3 of those were walk-ons. You need those, the walk-ons to get the job done. I would say walk-on Jordan McMillan as a safety who doesn't look or play like a walk-on. I think of all the walk-ons, he might be the one to keep an eye on. He played last year, and he's a smart, tough kid, and like a Matt Lopes kind of kid. So he might be my pick right now.
Yeah, like Matt Lopes was really good back in the day. Sometimes you'll have like special teams guys, but USC just gives them all scholarships now anyway, so not a ton. We'll keep watching through spring, but
that's pretty much it for questions as of now. I mean, my own question for you guys: what do you expect going forward as far as physicality? I know that's a big issue. Clay essentially said on Tuesday, you can't really go full speed with the DBs because Talanoa and Isaiah Pullman are still working back. I mean, how much do you expect physicality in this spring, and how much does that set USC going forward in fall and whatnot?
Well, I thought what was really good Saturday was Talanoa was out there with, that basically first group on defense in his yellow jersey, and pretty physical. I mean, the way they're doing with the emphasis on stripping the ball and interceptions and what have you, you didn't see him backing off that much. It wasn't like, oh, you're not cleared for full contact, so stand on the sideline. There wasn't any of that. So I like it that they're pushing the envelope, as far as that. I think there'll be a decent amount of physicality. I think the emphasis on taking the ball away is a big deal. The emphasis on running and running, to the football with good athletes, I think there'll be a lot of physicality that way. In terms of how much do you think, oh man, we can't do that tackling drill because we could get hurt or we won't. And I don't.
We're going to see like the Oklahoma drills and stuff.
And I don't know they're going to take people to the ground. I don't know that, but I think if you do the thud right, you get a lot out of it. But I think that's to be determined. Because that hasn't been a strength of Clay's. I mean, I've always talked about this. It's not easy. If you were a quarterback, a college quarterback, that meant you were a quarterback in high school, probably in Pee Wee football. That means you didn't get hit all your high school years, all your college years. You didn't hit anybody.
Yeah.
Okay? And that was the case with Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian and Clay Helton. So now, how do you get up to speed physically? That's not easy. I mean, the one quarterback I can think of was Jim Harbaugh was kind of crazy. And
right.
He didn't think or act like a quarterback.
No.
So he didn't coach him up like a quarterback. But other than that, I think it's hard to be a quarterback and coach that physicality. That's just not how you see the game. You see it as, executing plays and all that. So that's always that's going to be the big challenge for Clay and for this team, and we'll see how it works in terms of being a little bit afraid on the. And that's not an excuse. I mean, they just don't have many bodies in the secondary, and so. But I thought they did a good job of incorporating them into what they were doing in terms of team Saturday.
Mesa Recto says, who will be this year's breakout surprise player?
Ooh, we got this one before. I think I changed my answer every time.
You do.
Who did I say last time?
You said Talanoa Hufanga.
Yeah, I mean, but he's
He's almost past that at this point.
I think he was last year's surprise player.
Was it last year's surprise player?
Yeah, I mean, you didn't expect this guy to be as good as he was. I think Britton Allen has been the surprise for me so far this spring.
Who has?
Britton Allen.
Oh.
But he ended up getting hurt, right? He hurt his hip or something.
True, but until that happened.
You weren't there.
I was there when he got hurt.
I think Marquise Stepp is what he kind of said he was, that that he wants to be a 3-year player, and he's moving. I mean, he's for 230. He doesn't look like he's 230. He catches the ball. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities, to do so. I mean, I think we know what we expect out of Avi and out of Stephen Carr if they're, if Stephen is healthy, for example. But I think, Marquise Stepp might be a guy that you think, and Devin Williams, to this point, when you look at stats from last year, or production from last year, and what the possibilities are, he might be that guy.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to go with this time? For this time. We get this every week. I a different guy. Because I wrote a piece on John Houston about him moving to middle linebacker and making the calls, and he did that last year when Cameron Smith got hurt. And like Dan said, he's about, he's still not huge. He's, 222 pounds. The hate on the thread after my story was like, holy crap. And people were like mad at me. Like, what do you say? I'm like, I didn't declare him the starter. I'm like, he's the guy getting the ones. He's going to be making the calls as a middle linebacker. The backup middle linebacker has got to make the calls. Like, everyone does that. So I'm going to go with John Houston.
That's a good one. He was the second leading tackler. They acted like he didn't tackle anybody. Like he's tissue paper or whatever. He was the second leading tackler.
There's a lot of hate there. So I'm going to go John Houston now. I'll take a senior for my breakout
That's
player.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Even though he started the last 2 years, but his new position. All right.
YouTube is saying, I'm a fan of ABT, Elijah Vera Tucker, breakout player. I think that's a good pick, YouTube.
I think that's a good one, too. I think that's a good one.
Yeah, I think Keely, you said him before, right? Elijah
I'm on the Family Feud pod.
Yeah.
Friend of the pod, or show, Joan Levis. Yes, I know. I'm sorry, Joan. She says, the Athletic predicted that USC would win 8.5 games this season. What are your thoughts on that number?
That's a good number. I thought, those guys are good. I think is it going to draw into people to say, I'm really optimistic they're going to win 9, or they would have won 9 last year if Graham Harrell would have been running the offense.
And then the people are like, they're going to win 4. I'm definitely taking under.
I'll bet the under. So those guys are good. I mean, 8.5 is probably, if you're a USC person, you say, well, that means 9. And then you think, well, Athlon, we just looked at their top 100, all their 130 predictions, and that USC is number 48. Well, USC wins 9 games, they're not going to be number 48. Right. They're going to be in the top 25. So there are all kinds of, thoughts about those numbers. But I think that's a good number. That would be probably my number because it's just enough optimism, just enough pessimism.
I don't know what Vegas has. My guess is Vegas would be like 8 or even 7.5. That's what my guess
Well, I think that
be.
Was it might not be the total Vegas, but I think that was the bet online number. It was 8.5.
Okay,
that's the first.
Oh, it was.
Yeah,
okay.
That was the bet online. Number.
Oh, okay. So that's a little higher than I would thought. Okay.
I know it is higher than I think most people thought. Yeah.
Interesting.
Ulau, who I think is Tester Troy, says, with the great depth on special teams, how is that competition coming along? He didn't say what depth, what position.
So he's probably talking about kickers. So Chase McGrath is still hurt, but you got a couple of scholarship kickers there. But Ben Griffith is like the only punter right now, right? And he's just booming
good,
the ball.
Man. Yeah, he's impressive. But plus he's now the number 1 holder. He's really flexible. He's an athlete. You can see Aussie rules football and how much those guys all had to handle the ball and jump up and catch it in the crowd and all that. But he can really. He's not 6'7", some reports had him, but he's easily 6'5", and he's got great range in terms of catching it. But here's a guy as the holder who I don't know if he's ever been in I would guess never been in an American football game. I'm not sure he's ever seen an American football game in person, and yet he looked very comfortable.
Wonder if he can play safety. Right?
I think he's somebody you think about at goal line too. Give him one more really big receiver because he's got if you look at his highlights are really impressive.
Yeah.
In Aussie rules football, but. I like what they were doing. The first thing they did was they were working on, pooch punts, coffin kicks, but his pooch punts are like,
Yeah, they're bringing rain.
And guys, the more they did it, they realized, wait, we're all going to be able to get down there. And he's dropping that thing, near the pylon. And there's like 4 or 5 guys waiting for it to come down. And the more they do that, I'm giving them credit that we were not big fans of some of the time devoted to special teams, especially in the spring.
Correct.
But that's a good deal. If they can get that to the point where it becomes almost second nature in terms of
that's like a weapon for your.
That can be a real
yeah.
weapon. Yeah. So I like those little things that they're doing that we haven't seen them do before that look like that's smart.
Yeah.
I like that. So I think he changes the look of special teams, I think, a lot. And Chase McGrath is out there now. He's got all the the brace off and all of that. He's just out. Not kicking yet,
right?
And Michael Brown, I think, looked pretty good. And one of the things they're doing is they're not working on the kicking part of it so much, but getting guys on and off the field quickly and making sure they're 11.
11.
Get them on quickly and count to 11. So
important things.
Yes.
They also. I'm forgetting, it's in my notes, but there's a thing that Baxter yells where he just throws the ball and suddenly it's a minute until the game's over and they have to line up and kicks the ball. Oh, it's Mayday. They yell Mayday and they yell the ball and they throw the ball and they have to get in line and that's the end of the special teams portion. I think it's interesting.
And the other day they didn't quite get the kick off and he just set them off the field. He said, you had that many seconds, you didn't make it, you're out of here. And I think those are good learning lessons.
Yeah.
You got to do them though. I mean, and you can't give them any slack. If you got an idea how long you're going to let them do that, and that's a lesson learned.
Jason Kane, aka Jason, sometimes
Jason.
in Japan, he says if Graham Harrell really gets the air raid derivative working, would Stanford match up well with that defensively, or would it be too much tempo for them?
I think that's a difficult matchup. You look at the other way and they say, can USC match up with Stanford? Power and physicality, and I think that's a difficult matchup for Stanford because I think they run out of athletes who can play pass defense. If you get enough, wide receivers, enough receivers, and you run it quickly enough, I think that's an advantage USC, I would think.
Yeah, I think the quick passing can kind of eliminate some of the toughness in the front seven, or kind of neutralize that.
Jim says, I know you're trying to cut me off.
Probably wrap it up.
I'm trying to get everyone's questions in.
Right.
We got some good questions in.
People put them in late, I know.
They did. They tend to do that a lot. Jim says, we've heard about Stephen Carr's back injury and how it seems to be completely healed, and he has that burst back. But how about Marlon Tuipulotu? Does he seem a bit off or limited in terms of strength and pop?
I think we haven't seen enough of those guys yet. They tend to work out as far away in the far corners, and I think we did get to see they did a lot of stop starting and changing directions and all that. It looked to me like maybe a little bit lighter and maybe a little bit back and forth quicker on his feet. Coming out of a stance, I don't think we know yet, in terms of that kind of explosiveness and the advantage he should have as a former, super heavyweight wrestling champ and all that. So we'll try to watch more of that. One of the things I thought was interesting is the one-on-one pass block, pass rush is they're doing it with the wider splits. So you don't have 2 guys sumo wrestling anymore. You got guys that are taking bigger angles, and because that's just the nature of the way it is. So everything went quicker. But we didn't. I don't know that we got to see enough with the defensive line guys in terms of how they're going to look. But yeah, he's crucial. He's the key. I think the whole defensive line just sort of hit the wall last year. I just don't think we saw anybody progress like we expected. And there's a lot of talent there. And so, but he's somebody you got to watch, and we got to watch, and we hope we can give you a little better report as we go along.
Aiden really wants to hear a food analogy from you, Ryan.
I gave you a traffic, like a driving school analogy.
Yeah,
I thought that was a pretty good one.
True. But
Wait, you gotta it's gotta be spontaneous. I can't do it all the time.
it's your brand, Ryan. You have to deliver for the
like
people.
every day I
for
need
the
a food
masses.
analogy. Yeah.
It was so quick. Someone said, SNS Productions said, is it too much of a liability to have ITS as a potential special teams returner?
We thought that might be a factor in maybe in Vilas deciding not to come back or whatever, because he looks like he might be that natural kickoff return guy, but when they had the 4 doing it the other day, you had Tyler Vaughns and Michael Pittman and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I'm trying to think who the 4th one was, Stephen Carr. So you had kind of the veteran group. You didn't have Isaac Taylor Stewart in there. But, yeah, to me, he'd be somebody I'd take a look at. He looks like he's got that home run speed and, catch it and just hit the hit that hole. But we didn't see that the other day. But that's a good thought, I think.
So I know a lot of people are saying, like, why are these guys so optimistic? They were 5-7 last year. Clay Helton's the worst coach in the world. They're saying, why are they going to be good? You wanted a food analogy. So
I can see you churning over
I
there.
had to think of something, like just do a food analogy. I don't even know what the topic was. Here's the deal. So yes, you had this meal set up. Like you went to your girlfriend's house and she fed you basically slop, and you're like, this is awful. You still have the same girlfriend the next year. But you looked in the fridge before you ate the slop, and there was just a lot of like rotted food, and so it just wasn't all well put together. Now we're looking in the fridge, and there's like fresh ingredients, and there's all kinds of cool stuff in there. There's fruits and vegetables, and it looks like there's a nice veal chop and stuff in there. She hasn't made you dinner yet, but you're looking in the fridge, and it looks a lot better than what you saw before. So we're not saying you're going to get a great dinner. We're saying you got a better shot at getting a great dinner from what we've seen.
Well, maybe her mom came over and did all the shopping and put the menus together, and we could give Graham Harrell a spot as the visiting mom.
Yes, maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Is that all right? This is off the top of my head.
Interesting. It was good.
Okay.
Not your best, but it was good.
Damn.
On the spot. I'll give you a B plus on that.
So we don't know.
I think that's gonna wrap it up. We
That's
don't have
probably
it.
good.
Let's probably end on that note. Going forward, USC starts practice back up on Tuesday, and then they'll go the next 4 weeks, I believe.
Yes. 4 straight.
The odd thing, the spring showcase is on April 6th, and then USC will have another week of practice after that. Dan, what do you expect them to do in that last week?
That's a good question. I don't know. I know that they had to do the spring showcase because they're fitting it into the time slot that the Pac-12 networks gave them, because the Pac-12 networks needs programming that Saturday.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to, like they did last year, make it look like, something for the fans. I think that's a really good question, and we haven't asked them yet, but I think that's a terrific question. Where do you go from? You've had the spring showcase, now you've got 3 more days, and do you start even looking at at Fresno and Stanford or not? Or
wow,
I don't know, but they're so far along now that I really don't know where. I mean, last year you thought, gosh, that last week they should just call it off. I mean, it's just not going to do them any good.
Yeah.
Where this year, I'm not sure where they go with that. I mean, they probably don't want to get anybody hurt. But that's a really good question, and I think it's something we got to ask them. What is the plan?
Do you expect a quarterback to be named by then?
Oh, I don't think they even have to name a quarterback. I mean, there are people
maybe
who
after the spring they'll say, like, here's
here's the thing.
Who's ahead or something. I don't think they'll say he's the starter.
Okay, so the other day they tell you that I'm not going to name the starters until Friday. Okay, no more Sunday depth chart. Friday is when we're going to tell you who. It's going to be based a lot of it on practice, and so basically the starting unit will be released each Friday before the game. And of course, certain people just say, "Coach, have you decided on the quarterback?" And we're not going to release it till the last Friday in August, I guess it would be.
Yeah.
And people are saying, who's the quarter, or how do they look? Or they're not. I don't think they need to do much of that at all. I think the players are going to know. I think everybody's going to kind of know. But I think to keep with the theme of competition, and but you're going to see who's getting the reps, and you're going to see how it's going. But I don't think they feel any necessity to name the quarterback at this point. I mean, you got the guy who played almost all of last year is back, and he's probably going to look better than he did last year.
Yeah.
So, you figure it out.
We'll find out there. I have a little mini rant before we go.
Okay, people were a big fan of your analogy, by the way.
Did you like it? Oh,
YouTube
nice.
liked it. They thought you were
Thanks,
funny.
YouTube. Here's the deal. So our friends at Rain of Troy, I went on finally went on their show. We had Alicia on last week, so I went on their podcast, and I crushed it, of course. No, but one of the questions they had was, how would you change spring football? It could be in college football. It could be just for USC. And my biggest thing is I hate the fact that they call it the Spring Showcase now. They've backed away from a spring game. It used to be called the Trojan Huddle. You go to the Coliseum. They had in-and-out trucks showing up there. It was great. It was a thing. And then they got away from that for whatever reason. And it's been since the sanctions that they've realized, well, the depth isn't great, so we don't really want to do a spring game. Like, screw that. Do a freaking spring game. Like, do a game. Actually have a game. Call it the Trojan Huddle again. Not a spring. They call it Spring Showcase because they don't want to make it sound like a game because they don't want to play a game. I think they need to stop doing that. Go back to the Trojan Huddle. Run a damn spring game.
Well, just call it the huddle anyway, and do whatever you want to do. That's the right thing to do. But the showcase is silly. Just
yes.
The word showcase. Whoever came up with that, don't ever ask them for another idea because showcase sounds silly.
And if you want to have end practice on the 13th, you tell the Pac-12 network, we're USC, we're doing it then. Move something else because we are USC.
That's another good point.
Stupid.
Yeah.
So stop doing that, USC. You make enough mistakes. That's a small mistake, but you know.
I mean, I don't think USC's ever.
That's like having your butter knife on the wrong side of the plate. The mistakes going on right now is like your chicken's undercooked. Now we're complaining about the wrong silverware and they're not in the right place. Two food analogies, bam.
I mean,
utensil
the one good thing that's coming out of all this is, like in Stuart Mandel or anybody that writes about it says, do you know how badly the Pac-12 needs USC to be USC?
Yes.
I mean, come on. We tried to convince USC that they needed to act like they're USC with the Pac-12, and we haven't gotten anybody to say, yeah, we should. No, act like you're USC. You're in charge. If you go bad, the Pac-12's going bad.
Yeah.
Get your act together and tell the Pac-12, follow us. But, man, could you even imagine anybody at USC now having the ability to do that? I mean,
not act like USC, scandal USC, because that's what USC's been acting like. Act like USC, like you are the 800-pound gorilla in the conference, and act like it.
Yeah.
And they're not acting like it right now.
Our buddy Michael Castillo says, is Ryan fired up? I can't tell.
Yes, Michael. Thank you. It's funny.
Right.
I recorded this show on Tuesday, and they put up the show on Wednesday. Michael takes a little time to edit his.
I put the Family Feud podcast up a day later, too. When you actually take care and edit, Ryan, it takes some time.
We tape it live. Just go. Just bam.
True. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up. A special thanks to Dan for driving all the way from Tustin to be here live. We actually got a question for you earlier that asked if you're ever going to do a book signing around Tustin.
I'm almost out of books. I guess I could do the Barnes & Nobles in all of Southern California supposedly still have. I haven't checked with the one in Tustin. That would be the place to do it, although other people say do it at Trader Joe's. But then I'd have to come up with books. I'm down to 3 books right now.
Oh, wow.
So I have...
I mean, you could have people bring them, like order them on Amazon or buy them at
That would be the way to do it, maybe.
That's your ticket in.
The other one is, Amazon. You can definitely get them in Amazon. So that's a good idea. Let me think about that. That's very good.
Yeah.
We'll keep you updated
Sell
on
a few
that.
more books, yeah.
Yep. Alrighty. That is going to wrap it up. Like I said, thanks to Dan for coming in. Thanks for Ryan being Ryan and your analogies. You love it. Fan favorite. That's going to wrap it up. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Hopefully, cross your fingers, Shotgun will actually be back in the studio.
Yeah.
We'll be back with a normal tunnel vision, which will be great. Thanks to everyone who called in. We'll see you guys next week. Make sure you stay tuned for all our coverage of spring camp. We'll keep you updated. That's Ryan. That's Dan. I'm Keely. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Very good.